Hey guys, what's going on? It's Sports Talk with Stock, back here again with another video, and today we're doing the Seattle Seahawks 2020-2021 deep dive video. I'm going to first off start off with a team outlook, then I'm going to go into important headlines for the Seahawks, position ceilings and floors, and I'm going to give each position group a letter grade, and then I'm going to go into wins projections, team MVPs, team stat predictions, and then I'm going to conclude with the team summary. So let's just get started. The team outlook. Seattle on paper should probably not work out as a playoff team, but because of Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, they do. Year after year, they do. They do have a couple talented players, but I think they are on the lower end of the talent in the NFC West. There's the 49ers, who are obviously just in a Super Bowl, so their talent is good enough to get them there, and their coaching is good enough to get them there too. And then you have the Cardinals, who just made all these offseason additions, and I think their talent is a little bit better than the Seahawks. And then you have the Seahawks, which I think are obviously better than the Rams compared to the last season. But they just have such good role players. There's lots of role players, and Russell Wilson absolutely carries the Seahawks. He's such a good quarterback. He probably should have won an MVP award by now, but he's such a good player. He's such a good quarterback and such a good leader, and he leads them to victories and into the playoffs. Last year, they even got crazy. They had a lot of injuries. There was a lot of backups coming in, and they still made it to the playoffs. They still pushed for the playoffs, and they even beat the Eagles in the first playoff game. But I don't think they're going to be the biggest threat in the NFC West. I do think they are going to be one of the biggest threats in the NFL. And that's just because I think they're going to probably be the third place in our division, but I still think they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFL. That's pretty big for being in the third place, and they'll probably make a 6th or 7th seed in my book, but we haven't had the 7th seed before. But if they are and they make the playoffs as a 7th seed, they can be a really deadly 7th seed, and they can make you pay if you underestimate them. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into important headlines for the Seahawks. One of the biggest ones that's been coming up a little bit lately is Antonio Brown was working out with Russell Wilson. And what this means for the team, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything for the team. It's just two players working out together. But if the Seahawks really do decide to go and sign Antonio Brown, which I don't think that's actually going to happen, it's unlikely. They would have to be able to do what the Steelers and the Raiders and the Patriots were unable to do, which is make him coachable on and off the field. Now, if Bill Belichick can't make Antonio Brown a coachable player, I think Pete Carroll is a good coach, but I don't think he can do it if Bill Belichick cannot do it. Now I'm going to go into the running backs on the roster. There's a lot of them. There's Rashad Penny and Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde, and there's just so many good running backs there. I feel like they're going to be one of the top rushing teams in the league. And then you also have Russell Wilson, who can run the ball too. It's just going to be such a tough time trying to stop the Seahawks running game, because there's going to be so many fresh people in the backfield, and there's going to be so much rotation. I feel like it's just going to be a great thing for the Seahawks running backs, and a great thing for their rushing attack. And Bobby Wagner, he's probably the best linebacker in the NFL. Not probably, he is the best linebacker in the league. There's just no questions about it. Year after year, he leads the league in tackles, and he makes amazing plays, and just an absolute stud on defense. And now DK Metcalf is a second-year wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, and he had a pretty good season last year. Most of that is probably because of Russell Wilson, of course, but I just think that DK Metcalf, he can have a really good season this year, especially with Russell Wilson, and DK Metcalf's only going to get better. That was his rookie season, so this year he should have a really good season, and he's going to get less attention because Tyler Lockett is a better receiver, and he should be taking the attention away from DK Metcalf, and I think it's just going to cause problems for the defenses. Then the offensive line is no question one of the worst in the league. Russell Wilson, though, he doesn't really let it be a problem for him. He still continues to make plays, and it just shows to you what his talent is and how good of a quarterback he is, that even with one of the worst offensive lines in the league, that he can still produce amazing numbers and still win and still make it to the playoffs and even win in the playoffs. And that's just crazy to me, and that shows how good of a quarterback that Russell Wilson actually is. And then their defense is also pretty bad. There are key pieces, though, in place for them to be a surprise defense. Not like a top 5 or a top 10 even, but a top 15 maybe. And they can make plays, and they can stop their offense, and they can get in the way. And just don't underestimate the defense is what I'm trying to get at. This next section that I'm going to get into is the position ceilings and floors for each position group. I'm going to start off with the QB position, and the QB position has Russell Wilson. So you know it's already going to be great. I'm giving that an A+, just based on Russell Wilson and what he's done already. The running back position can also be really good for the Seahawks, though, and I think they will be a 3-headed or possibly a 4-headed monster in the backfield if you count Russell Wilson. Although Carlos Hyde did join them this offseason, I don't think he's going to be that big of a threat. I think it's going to be more of a, what's his name, the running back Homer back there. That's going to be really a bigger problem than Carlos Hyde. For the wide receiver position, you have 2 really good receivers in my book. You have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and then there's just nobody really else back there that hasn't stepped up really, and I think there just needs to be somebody that steps up from that position for the third wide receiver position. And now I'm going to go into tight end position. I think that can be a really good position if Olsen still has something left in the tank and he does not get injured. Even if he does, I do have faith in the Seahawks that they will find a good tight end for them, because I feel like the Seahawks have really always had a good tight end for them. And I rank that position as a B- for them. The offensive line is one of the worst in the league. Dwayne Brown is pretty much holding that entire line together. I give that position group a D. For the defensive line group, this group has a lot of potential, and hopefully their Seahawks last year first round pick LJ Collier steps up a little bit and he makes more plays, because he made no plays last year. And I think that they can be a pretty good position group. I give that one a B. Linebacker has the best linebacker in the league. There's potential for the Seattle Seahawks first round pick. There's a reason that they drafted him in the first round, Jordan Brooks. And then there's KJ Wright, who's always been a good sidekick for Bobby Wagner. There's no reason he shouldn't do good with him this year. I give that position group an A. Then defensive backs, there are really good players, and then there's also really big holes in the defensive backs. Quandre Diggs is a really good safety for the Seahawks, and he can make an amazing amount of plays for them. And then Shaquille Griffin, I think he's really settled into the role of cornerback. I think he can be really good for them. But then there's a lot of other players who still have to prove themselves, and pretty much everybody else in that defensive back group has to prove themselves, other than Bradley McDougald, who I think has also been a really good safety for them, and I give that position group a B-. This next section is team MVPs. This is just which players are going to be the leaders and the best players on each side of the ball. For offense, I think Russell Wilson, of course, it's a no-brainer He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. In my opinion, the second best quarterback in the league, just behind Patrick Mahomes. And he really just deserves an MVP award. He really does. He's just an amazing player. He carries the team. He makes the players around him make them look amazing. And then on defense, I have Bobby Wagner, who is the best linebacker in the entire NFL. He just year after year makes plays after plays, and as a Cardinals fan, I watch him play twice a year, so I just get to know how good Bobby Wagner is and just what an amazing player he really is. And then for the dark horse MVP, I have Rashad Penny winning that. He started to break out last season, and then he tore his ACL, which he was out for the rest of the season. I think he will leave, or he will start right where he left off, and then he will win the rushing title for the Seahawks. Rashad Penny, he still has a lot to work to do. He's coming off of a major injury, and coming off injury is always hard, especially since it was an ACL tear. But if he puts in the work in, I see his potential as being one of the best in Seahawk history. And that really says a lot because of the past running backs that have been there. And I feel like he can just take off. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into the team stats predictions. For passing, I think it's obviously going to be Russell Wilson. 4,200 in passing yards with 32 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He's just going to be an amazing player like he always is. For rushing, I think Rashad Penny will have 1,200 yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. For receiving, I have Tyler Lockett having 1,000 receiving yards, DK Metcalf having 9 touchdowns, and Tyler Lockett having 84 receptions. For total tackles, I have Bobby Wagner getting 155 tackles. And then for tackles for loss, I have Bobby Wagner also getting 9 of those, leading the team. For sacks, I have Bruce Irvin leading the team with 7 sacks, and Quandre Diggs leading his team with 4 interceptions. For forced fumbles, I have Bobby Wagner getting 3 of those also, on top of him leading his team in total tackles and tackles for loss. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into wins projections. Their lowest record, I believe, would be 7-9 if they are not super competitive like I feel they can be, and if they are just overloaded with injuries and their role players do not step up. Their highest record I see them going is 14-2. That's if there are very little injuries for them and just depth and rotation all step up. And then there's just, they don't have any unnecessary losses, and Russell Wilson has an amazing year, wins the MVP. The actual record I believe they're going to go is 10-6. If they play as competitive as I think they will play, then they are not, and they are also not overloaded with injuries like they were last year, then they should be able to fight through a tough NFC West and for a playoff spot and a 6th or 7th seed. The Seattle Seahawks don't have an easy road to get to the playoffs, but I don't see an NFL playoffs this year without them in it. They are an ultra competitive team and have gotten to the playoffs being very injured last year. They competed with the 49ers, the team in the Super Bowl, not once but twice, and they even beat them once in week 11. They will probably be the 3rd team in the NFC West, but that doesn't mean they're a bad team. They can make waves week to week and even in the postseason. Russell Wilson can really carry this team and should enjoy another great season and honestly deserves the MVP in my books. Seahawks fans should enjoy another playoff season from the competitive team in the West.